Yeah, I'll never forget. I was driving home from failing, and I was going down the 405, stuck in traffic, of
Mhm.
course. I had to walk my dog, and so I went and walked the dog, and then I had to go back to the school for a reception. So it was a very humbling reception because the people who had graduated were being celebrated, and people knew that you were tried and you didn't pass. So I just had to think to myself, do I really, really want to do this? Because if so, I'm going to have to get some help. I can't do it alone, so I'm gonna have to check my ego. And I got a really person who actually became my remix partner, DJ V to help me. I had to take some extra lessons to rebuild my fundamentals and just be open to feedback and just accept that I have to do some more practicing. I have to take it a little more seriously, and that helped me prepare to take the class the next time. At the same time, I was helping my other classmates who were going through, maybe it was their first time or their second time, but just creating more of a community to help lift more people all the way through. And so it really was just, how bad do I want it? Am I going to be able to check my ego? Because there are people there half my age, kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, that were doing circles around me. And so, that can be very humbling and also very scary. So to get through the fear of failing again. And
Welcome, Amani Roberts, to Sunday Communion Podcast.
thank you. Yes, Lee, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited and honored that you asked me to appear.
I'm excited too, and thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. We're going to talk about, there's many things we can talk about, but we're going to talk specifically today and hopefully another podcast because we're going to talk about your book that
Hmm.
is just coming out and The Quiet Storm.
Yes. Yes.
And I just got chills when I said it. It's a topic that excites me. Obviously, you're very passionate about. So tell us what The Quiet Storm is about.
So this book is about the history of R&B groups. We go back from the 50s and take it all the way to the mid 2000s. We divide it up by different decades and share the top 10 or 11 groups per decade based on kind of like three or four criteria: record sales, Grammy nominations, Grammy wins, Billboard Hot 100 hits, which is the regular charts that cover all genres, and then notable performances. A notable performance, particularly in the 50s and 60s, would be if an R&B group appeared on like The Tonight Show, American Bandstand, some of the bigger shows where they really didn't have a lot of R&B groups or black R&B groups there. That's a notable performance. And that's the first 80% of the book. The last 20% is what happened to R&B groups, why did they disappear, and what's going to happen in the future. And so that's what the book's about. I like to say the book is like my love letter to R&B music.
Well, we met, we've known each other, but then we met for breakfast, and then we started talking about the book, and then I invited you to be on the podcast. And between that point and actually recording this has only been a couple of days.
Yes, yes, yes,
So
yes.
I haven't had a chance to read it, but you were gracious enough to send me a preliminary copy. But, I'm very tactile and I want the
The book,
actual
yes.
book. And so I'm doing the pre-order.
Thank you.
And this morning prior, I started just digging into the table of contents and reading your intro. And I was like, I want more because you forget certain groups. Like for me, the 70s was very, and was my time, and the introduction to funk music and R&B, and I was surprised at some of the groups that I didn't see,
Okay, okay.
and then groups that I had forgotten about, like the
Yeah.
Ohio Players.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to Google that, and I wanted to go on YouTube, and I wanted to listen to the old songs. And so that love letter that you were writing is a love letter to all of us
Mm.
who love R&B.
Mm-hmm.
I just got
Mm-hmm.
chills again.
Yes.
So thank you. Thank you for writing this
You're
book.
welcome. You're welcome. Remind me,
Um,
I'm gonna send you the playlist so you can have the playlist on Spotify and YouTube and you can follow along. Remind me to send you the links to that. Right after the show, I'll send you the links.
is
Yes.
that part of like the website? Oh,
Yes, because
fantastic.
you scan the QR codes and it'll give you either a Spotify playlist or a YouTube playlist for my favorite songs and my favorite samples. So there's a lot of music in there.
Wonderful. Well, this is going to be the 2025 playlist.
Yes.
Walk down memory lane. So I do want to get to, let's do kind of your intro to the
Hmm.
book. Why this book? What started this passion for you?
Hmm. So initially, my thesis for grad school was why there are no longer any black R&B groups. And that was my thesis. I did research. My students at Cal State University Fullerton helped me with the research. I came up with all the quantitative data, and then I had to mix in the qualitative data, and it came up with some reasons and all that. And then I decided to take this and turn it into a book, which meant that I had to go decade by decade, do research on each group, write about them, pick my favorite songs, favorite samples, do the research for their Billboard hits for, I want to say, about 64 groups through the decades. And I just I grew up loving R&B music. I'm a slow jam kind of guy. Back in the day, you make mixtapes trying to court young ladies or whatever, and I loved it. I was successful some part of the time. And so that just kind of grew my love for it, listening to the Quiet Storm shows, whether it be the Quiet Storm back in DC from WHUR, which is where it got it started. Then it was like I used to listen to Glenn Hollis on 97.1. So it's just a part of me. And so I decided to write the book. It grew to bigger than I had ever imagined. And that is where we are now.
Well, The Quiet Storm, I remember that show. So
Yes, yeah.
explain that a little more for folks who aren't familiar with it.
Yes. So I'm glad you remember it because like there's certain tests you can take book titles through, and I picked the Quiet Storm because it's native tongue. So people who grew up in like the 70s, 80s, and early 90s know that most radio stations had a particular format that was at nighttime, usually between 9 and 10 to about midnight, 1 or 2. That was like the Quiet Storm. They'd play love songs. People would call in, make requests. One of my dream jobs would be the DJ that you would call up to say, you know what? I miss my boyfriend. He's far away. Can you dedicate a song from me to him? And I pick a song and play it. That's like one of my dream jobs. So that radio format is the Quiet Storm format. It got to be extremely popular all over the world. And so that's the particular radio format. And then it kind of died away as hip hop got to be more popular and radio preferences changed to match a younger audience and everything. But also, when you look at what's happened with R&B groups and their rise and their demise, it is like a quiet storm because no one's talking about it yet. When I tell people about the subject, like, you know what, you're right. I don't see any more groups anymore, any R&B groups. What happened? So the title has kind of double meaning.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of explains the title for everyone listening.
And so I guess you're not going to tell us what happened. We have to read the book.
Well, you got to read the book. There's a couple things you got to read the book, but just the emergence of hip hop. There's a law that was passed in 1996 that was supposed to have a positive impact on kind of independent radio stations, but instead the opposite happened where you had these three companies buy up all the radio stations and go to a playlisting format. So if we're in Chicago, we're in Miami, we're in LA, we're in DC, you generally will hear the same songs on the radio.
Such a shame.
Yeah, so that's just gives you a little bit of taste. There'll also be a documentary hopefully coming soon, now that the book's coming out. So, but that gives you a little bit of a taste and a preview of just what happened.
Were there any surprises for you?
Ooh, okay. So there were some surprises like doing research on the Supremes. So the Supremes, I just thought they hit the ground running, but they didn't. They were given kind of a hard time by Motown. They only were allowed to clap on songs initially, then just sing backup. Then they didn't have a hit for a while, so they were called the No Hit Supremes. But then they went on an unprecedented run of 11 out of their next 13 singles hit number one on the charts, which is yet to be duplicated before. They're also That's one surprise. Another surprise is that like they and the Supremes and Destiny's Child are the only two groups based on my research that their last songs went to number one on the charts. Usually a group kind of just fades away into oblivion. Not those two groups. So that's a surprise. Another surprise would be it wasn't a surprise, but it was a surprise. The top two reasons for groups to break up were money in terms of disputes, particularly with their record label, and then like drug usage. It just was such a prominent thing, particularly the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. It kind of didn't really happen that way in the 90s and after, but the disputes with the record label and money just tore groups apart. So that was a surprise, but I just had the amount of people and amount of groups that affected was a surprise. Let me pick a third surprise. Just how after about 2005, like the R&B groups on the charts just disappeared. There were no more after such a long run of hits that were on the charts. It's just like they fell off a cliff, and that was particularly shocking.
And what do you think the reason for that is? Because it is shocking, especially when you see something just shut down
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And my son was born in 2005.
Okay, okay.
And as he became a young person and loves music, and for his time, it was rap,
Yeah, hip
right?
hop. Yeah.
Hip hop and rap, and I found as I was leaning in for him, listening to the music that he's listening to, I longed for R&B,
Hmm.
old school R&B, because I said the lyrics are so different.
Yes.
And it concerned me because I explained to him, I said, in my day, right? And I'm like,
Hmm.
oh my God, I've turned into my mother. In my day, the music, and I would, have him listen to some of these songs. The lyrics were so phenomenal. They were about love, right? The greatest subject of lyrics
Yeah.
ever.
Hmm.
And to be able to have such a long run of artists from, you said, 60s, are there
50s.
50s?
50s. Yeah,
So
50s.
50s, 60s, 70s, all the way through, to be able to have all these variations of lyrics and songs, and in under this umbrella of this just great topic. Uh, but it's changed.
It
So
has.
what do
Yeah.
you think that's about?
Well, I think nowadays compared to lyrics in the past, and we have to be careful because we don't want to be that old guy on the lawn, get off my lawn or whatever, but there is just more subtlety and a little bit more cleverness with the lyrics back in the day. Whether it be Rick James singing about Mary Jane, like he's
Love
singing
Rich.
about weed and drugs, but
Right.
nowadays they just tell you what the drugs are that they're smoking and doing, whereas he at
Right.
least tried to hide it behind Mary Jane.
It was more clever,
Yes,
right?
there's a little more clever. There's no subtlety nowadays. Also, we're a lot less censored nowadays too. I mean, people can say they can put it out. Even
Mm.
outside of regular FM radio, terrestrial radio, like songs they can be cursing and carrying on, and you can be listening to it in the car where it wasn't like that before. I think that the skilled lyric writers aren't given the publicity than just kind of popular artists are. There's still some phenomenal lyric writers out there in music in general. I mean, we can cross genres. You can look at like, well, we'll stay with R&B. Then I'll give you some other examples like a SZA or Her. They write some pretty good lyrics. Kenyon Dixon, good lyrics. Luke James, they have some really good lyrics, but they don't really get played on popular radio much. Now, Taylor Swift, phenomenal songwriter, phenomenal lyricist, she does get played, and she has some subtlety. She has good lyrics. I like her lyrics or whatever. They're pretty thorough and they can be clever. But for the most part, you look at the lyrics now, it's just not the same. So, and then you compare it to like you look at like we can go way back to Smokey Robinson, one of my favorite examples. Another thing that surprised me is how such a phenomenal songwriter he is. He's got a great pen, as we say in the industry, great pen. If you look at the lyrics and listen to the lyrics, like the tracks of my tears,
Hmm.
that is a phenomenal song with phenomenal lyrics. Like I'm surprised it hasn't been remade because that song lyrically wise is great. You look at one of my personal favorites, Babyface. And some of the lyrics that he has, phenomenal lyrics, and he's produced a lot of the groups that are in the book as well as single artists too. Even more currently, like Mary J. Blige's song "No More Drama."
Oh,
Like that's a very direct song, but the lyrics are right on point too. Like that's good.
and she wrote that.
But pretty sure she did. We have to double check. But yeah, that's like, and then they put it to the theme song for Young and the Restless. Like that's clever.
Hmm.
Like that's clever when they sampled the theme song for Young and the Restless and put that like that. That doesn't really happen too much anymore. Like that. So that's just a couple examples of why I feel that way and who are some great lyricists currently.
So I want to talk more about that, about the current lyricists. And when you said something like, I'm surprised it hasn't been remade. Have there been any remakes of old R&B songs that hit again
So
that you can think of?
Troop did a remake of the Jackson song. Ooh, I think it was "All I Do Is Think About You." All I do is that song. So they did that. That was in the '80s. I'm trying to look at currently. I haven't really heard many yet. What you will see and hear is samples.
Right.
So a lot of the hip hop groups from and the R&B artists and even some pop artists will sample R&B groups, and that's kind of their way of giving tribute and paying tribute to R&B, which I love. So that's what you will see and you will continue to see. In terms of remakes, nothing that pops off the mind just yet, but I'm sure some are coming potentially. But there's a lot out there that could be remade that could sound good. So um,
I do
let's
like
kind
the
of see what
samples.
happens.
My son has, always when I pop in the car, right?
Yeah.
He's
I mean
introduced
that's
new
why I
music.
set up a section of the book for each group that tells people what three songs are my favorite samples from current music from those groups. So that's another way to try to bridge the old and the new.
And some of these groups are still playing.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, you got the Isley Brothers. They're going to be here in Vegas this
that's
Thursday and
it.
Saturday.
That's
Yeah.
right, this week, right,
Yeah.
that we're
They're going to be
recording
this
this.
week. Yes. And it'll
Yeah,
be
and
a
I was
packed
like, oh,
house
guys.
too.
And who else?
It'll be a packed house. Like it'll be
Oh,
crowded there. Yeah.
absolutely. I'd love, no, it's probably too late to get
Yeah.
tickets to that, but I would love to see that. Um, were some of my favorite groups didn't make the list. So were there any groups that you were surprised that are like your favorites that didn't make the list?
Shy, because they came from Howard University, but when you put them in the little formula for the criteria, they didn't qualify.
Shy.
Beat Shy, they had the song "If I Ever Fall in Love," and I don't really want to sing, but if I ever
Come
fall in
on.
love, yes, yes, they had the song. B2K is another group from like the '90s and 2000s. They were surprised. Uh, and I made room in the '60s. The '70s, I think, had the longest honorable mention because there were just so many groups that I just had to mention because it was such an important time in the '80s. So those are the two groups. I'm sure I'll get some feedback from people where they're like, "Oh, you missed this group or that group," but those were the two that kind of I remember right away. And I'm sure as I continue to hear feedback from people who read the book, oh, what about this group? What about that group? Another surprise I'm remembering is like In Vogue never had a number one hit.
Oh, really?
Yes. The Jacksons never won a Grammy.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Those are just some surprises. I'm just like, wow. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So what groups were in it that you were looking forward to that weren't there?
Well, they might be in your honorable mention section.
Okay.
Bill Withers,
Okay, but he's more of a single artist. So it's not a group.
Okay, so not a group.
No,
All right.
yeah.
Well, that's good. So maybe that's your next book.
Could be. Yes,
Yeah.
could be.
Um,
Although I would love to write like a book only about like TLC. They have a story that needs to be told frequently, or a book about like SWV there, or I don't know if he has a autobiography yet, but I would love to partner with like Babyface and write his autobiography with him.
all right, we're
Like those are,
sending that out,
yeah,
Babyface,
yes,
right?
those are stories that need to be told.
And we have a lot of artists that live here in Vegas.
I know, and he comes for a
So,
residency too.
yeah. So,
Yeah,
lots of connections there.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Fifth Dimension. I was
Okay, you
surprised,
mentioned them. Yeah.
yeah, that they
Okay.
weren't in there. And then now that I'm looking at my list that I wrote, Marvin Gaye, Al Green, Aretha, right? So single
Single
artist.
artists. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
This is a. I got to give love to the groups.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But we did talk about Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes and
They're
Tony
in there. They're honorable mention. They're in there. So
Bennett.
yes,
And Barry White, of course, again, single artist. So
single
now I get
artists.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was like, wait a minute, where are my people?
He also is a great songwriter and great lyricist. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he was
So,
very, very direct and bold in his era, and people were like, it was scandalous. But when you listen to him now, compared to what's out now, he's
oh
very mild.
yeah, but come on,
Yeah.
there lots of memories with Barry White. I think we can all.
He was also extremely knowledgeable about the music business. There's the clip of him talking on the Arsenio Hall show where he talks about the music business, how important it is to own your rights and to really be careful about who you partner with. It's a phenomenal clip. I encourage anyone to Google and look on YouTube for that clip because this is way back in the day before artists nowadays are a little bit more educated. So he knew about the business. He knew what was going on.
Um, couple. I want to talk about you and DJing, and how the love for music was sparked for you.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to talk about how you see the music business changing in this next era.
Okay. So DJing, I think my desire to DJ really started when I saw Biz Markie at a club in Washington D.C. when I was at Howard University, and it was an experience like I've never had before, where he just had us, the crowd, on fire the entire night, and he had a section of his DJ set where he played TV theme show songs. So back in the day, he would play the theme show songs from like Different Strokes, Golden Girls, um, Fat Albert, What's Happening, and we would be singing along because the TV theme shows were a thing back in the day. And he went through like, he even did like Miami Vice, some of them with like instrumentals, and when he put on the facts of life, you take the good, you take the bad, and there you have like we were singing along. This is in a hip hop club, so like a hip hop club at Howard. We were singing along to these theme show songs. The Jeffersons, we're moving
Oh,
on up. Like
oh, I love
all
that one.
these theme show songs. And that was when I said, you know what, I want to do what he does. But when I graduated from school, like I didn't think it was a realistic job. I didn't think, I was programmed to, corporate job, 9 to 5, work your way up the ladder. So
Right,
I
that's
did
something
that.
you just do for fun,
Yeah, I
right?
did that for like 20 years with Marriott. But when I moved, but in every city I lived in, I'll go listen to the DJs and just watch and do that. Then when I moved to LA, I decided to first be self-taught, then go to Scratch Academy to learn, and then kind of go out on my own and be a professional DJ, which I've been doing now for like 18 years. Right? Yeah, 18 years. Yeah.
And do you focus purely on R&B, or do you
So
what's your jam?
I can play all genres. I'm a genre bender. I love to play everything, Latin music, R&B, hip hop, Afro beats. So if I had my way, like I love like Afrobeats is a newer genre that I love to play, and I'll mix in R&B and B and some pop. Like that's what I do. But I can play the top 40 hits also. But I love to like play like R&B music. That's like my soul slow jams. I love to be a slow jam DJ. That's like my sweet spot. But I'm skilled enough to cover everything and do it well.
And you do this for corporate events, meetings and
Mainly
events.
like corporate events. I'll do some lounges, a club every once in a while, and maybe a wedding here and there, but mostly corporate events.
And when you get a phone call for a job, what lights you up? Like, what makes you like, oh yeah, I really want to do that one?
When they say, we trust your musical taste, we just want you here from this time to that time and play what you want.
That's awesome. So
That
what
doesn't
did,
happen too often, actually. That doesn't happen too
right,
often.
right.
Yes.
So you said you went to school to be a DJ. It's called Scratch. Was it?
So it's Scratch Academy. So Jam Master Jay from Run DMC
Oh.
started this school in New York. Then, unfortunately, 6 months after he started the school, he was murdered. But they kept the school going in New York, and then it spread to LA. Then there was a school in Philly, Chicago, Miami, and I think that's where there's some schools are now. So I went there. It's like getting your master's degree in DJing. You have to pass classes. The final class you have to get 320 out of 400. What you're getting scored on is you have to do different kinds of music sets. So I have to do a set where it's like I'm prime time at a club playing all the hits. Then I have to do an opening set where I'm opening up for a musician or another DJ. So you can't play all the hits. You have to kind of, it takes skill. You have to kind of like dance around the hits and play stuff that used to be shit, but you have to set the person up that's the headliner for success. You want to warm the crowd up and have them ready to go off once the headliner comes on. You have to play a lounge set, all these sets, and you're scored on your presentation, how well you do on the microphone, your song selection, your mixing skills, everything. It's really intense. The first time I went through the last class, I got a 318 out of 400. So they didn't pass me. I had to take it again. Very humbling experience. Very humbling experience. I had to swallow my pride, take the class again, where there's no guarantee that you'll pass it because it's very subjective, and many people
How long
fail
is the
multiple
class?
times.
How long
It's
is the
about
course?
8 weeks, 8 weeks,
Anyways.
but the whole school's about a year. So you're going through and you're passing these levels from 101 to 505. This was 505. And you have some electives in there also. So the second time I took the class, I passed it, had one of the highest scores ever because I did well. So that was good, and the director of the program had some really really kind and unique words to share. That if I'm ever feeling down or anything, I'll turn on that video just to remind myself of how far I've come. So that was Scratch Academy. Then I went back to Scratch Academy for music production school, so I could learn about producing music and being a music producer. And so I kind of have that skill set. And then, like I talked about in the beginning, I went to Berklee College of Music for my master's degree in music business.
Wow,
It
that's a lot.
is. It is.
Um, so you talked about your dream job.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
are you doing your dream job?
So I had a time period when I was on Twitch, kind of during the pandemic, where I would have like my own show on Sunday nights, streaming slow jams, dedications, things. It was halfway there, but not yet. But I really want to get to a time when there's like people calling in. It's a little bit passe now. People don't really do that anymore, but maybe we can bring it back. So I got halfway there, but not all the way. So we'll see how I can get there. I still got my eyes open.
Good, good. I love that. And you talked about, I mean, this show, we talk a lot about overcoming obstacles,
Yes.
right? Because, you know, we grew up with this kind of fairy tale, and many kids do. They get fed all of the cartoons or the Disney movies and the books and the Cinderella and all of that, that life is supposed to be great and it's a fairy tale and you live happily ever after. Well, that isn't life. Life is a stream of obstacles to overcome, and I think it's important for us to promote that it's how we manage those uh, ebbs and flows, that we embrace the contrast because it's our greatest teacher, and that we embrace it in a way that it's part of life.
Right.
So when
Right.
we do have an obstacle, like you didn't pass the first time.
Mhm.
How did you overcome that and use it for
Mm.
your
Mm.
future, really, development?
Yeah, I'll never forget. I was driving home from failing, and I was going down the 405, stuck in traffic, of
Mhm.
course. I had to walk my dog, and so I went and walked the dog, and then I had to go back to the school for a reception. So it was a very humbling reception because the people who had graduated were being celebrated, and people knew that you were tried and you didn't pass. So I just had to think to myself, do I really, really want to do this? Because if so, I'm going to have to get some help. I can't do it alone. So I'm going to have to check my ego. And I got a really person who actually became my remix partner, VFresh, DJ VFresh, to help me. I had to take some extra lessons to rebuild my fundamentals and just, be open to feedback and just accept that I have to do some more practicing. I have to, take it a little more seriously. And that helped me prepare to take the class the next time. At the same time, I was helping my other classmates who were going through, maybe it was their first time or their second time, but, just creating more of a community to help lift more people all the way through. And so it really was just, how bad do I want it? Am I going to be able to check my ego? Because there are people there half my age, kids, 15, 16, 17 years old, that were doing circles around me. And so, that can be very humbling and also very scary. So to get through the fear of failing again and just fight your way and just be ready to work. And that's how I got through it. That was probably one of the bigger um, business kind of setbacks. And then writing the book, that was tough too, because you write the book, well, you do the project for grad school, and then there was a year where I couldn't get back to it. So, like the whole 2022, I was doing interviews, but I couldn't sit down and start to write the book. I was burned out. I was around some people that probably weren't the best influences or just weren't positive. So I had to kind of clean that up. And then eventually in 2023, I was able to start to write more, go on a writing retreat, and get it done. It was very tough to complete the book. It was very, very hard, but we got there. So that's just kind of two big obstacles that I kind of was able to work my way through.
Well, you talked about, thank you for sharing that. And
Sure.
and and I love your authenticity. And we, in reflection of things that kind of bring us down a peg, right? When you said, about the ego, I think that those are some of the toughest to overcome. But then in hindsight, they're very powerful lessons, and we're better people for them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, do you find, in reflection of how you grew up, which I'd love to get into that a little bit, like, um, what was your home life like? Because 0 to, I think it's 7 years old, our brain is in theta state, which is mimics hypnosis.
Mm.
And so we reflect back on our early childhood as a foundational point of the patterns that we lay down, right? The programs that we lay down. And often we are, replaying those patterns and programs throughout our lives until we do the inner work to say, hey, that, I noticed that I'm attracting this same type of pattern, different players, different people, different scenario, but really the core of it is the same. So tell us about your early childhood.
So I grew up in a two-parent household with a younger brother, probably, lower middle class. Um, I would say through soccer. I played a lot of soccer as a kid. And through that, I suffered some crushing defeats, junior high school, which is a little bit after theta stage, but that's what I think was the beginning of the growth of like my resilience muscle.
Mm.
I also grew up in a strict household, so that was something where you might always be living in fear of getting a punishment, maybe fear of getting a spanking, so maybe you're a little reserved, don't speak up. That could be some patterns that have continued throughout my later life. Like, ran into some trouble in the past about fear of being alone, so that would prevent me from speaking up or really saying things. So I think that could be a pattern that you can look back into my younger life that kind of has continued to go all the way through. But overall, like, I did well in school. I was able to make friends, got to go through the typical life stuff for a kid. But the growing up, I think strict household, just probably living in fear a little bit. Um,
Did you have any religious or spiritual foundation growing up?
I would go to Baptist church, so this, but then once I started to play traveling soccer, that kind of went in. But I kind of grew up like Baptist church, but not too religious. Nothing, not too religious. Yeah.
Do you still like soccer?
I love soccer. I just, when I moved to Vegas, I kind of stopped playing because I was worried about my hamstrings and everything. But I love soccer. Been to three World Cups. Can't wait for the next one. I watch it on TV when I can get the time. But I love the sport.
Who's your
Yeah.
team?
Liverpool. So Liverpool's my team. Yeah. Sorry. Who are you? Like Arsenal, Manchester United? Who's
Chelsea.
your team? Chelsea. Yes. See, so
Chelsea.
you get it. Yes. Yes. Sorry about that. But
Yes,
yes.
Chelsea.
Yes. Of course. Got the blue one. Yes.
Um, so you went from DC, that's where you were born and raised,
Yes.
to LA?
So no, I grew up in DC, went to Howard University. Then I started working for Marriott when I was in school, started as a bellman, and then I
Love
moved
Marriott.
to Atlanta, then Chicago, then Dallas, then Miami, then back to DC, then out to LA, and then to Vegas.
That's the hospitality industry
Yeah.
right there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I worked for Hyatt
Okay, yeah,
early
yeah.
early in the career. So I think that hospitality, uh, hotels, meeting industry is such a phenomenal industry for young people to get into. I mean, you have kind of these passions and this love, you're a public speaker, you're an author, you're a DJ, you have this passion for music. Um, how does that all come into your next chapter of what you want to do? I heard you say that you would like to do a documentary based on the book.
Correct. Yes.
Is that the next stage for you? Is that the next
I
creative
think the
outlet?
next stage, also professor, which actually I love
Oh,
doing the
oh my
most.
gosh,
I love doing that the most. So I
that's
think
the
the
big
next,
one, right?
yes,
Talk about
yes.
that, right?
Well, I grew up the son of a professor. My dad was a professor at Howard, and I wanted to do absolutely nothing that he did. So I tried for 40 some years to, avoid and stay far, far away. But somehow, some way, I ended up becoming a professor. And actually, I ended up loving it, and I do well at it. I guess it's something about me, how I teach, but the kids, I really resonate with the kids. They come to class, they participate. I learn as much from them as I teach them, which I love to share with them, which is a fact. And it changed my life when I got that teaching position. And so the next chapter will definitely include some form of teaching, writing, and music. I'm not sure. Like I like to coach people in the music industry or musicians to help them make better business decisions because we see so many examples of young, medium experience, even the most experienced musicians making poor decisions because they just don't have the knowledge. And so, knowledge is power. That's not a cliche, that's a fact. And so I really want to kind of help people make better business decisions. And then I think the documentary is probably the next stage once this book is out and I get the right context and can really get access to people who can do interviews and we can make it happen. Like that's the next big long-term project, I feel.
I love that. Let's talk a little bit about the courses that you teach.
Yes. So I teach, I'll save my favorite course for last. I teach entertainment operations. So it's like kind of film, TV, music, sports, and a little gaming. Those industries, how they earn money, and kind of what happens behind the scenes. I teach a strategic business seminar, which is for graduating seniors. It's like a project based class for them to teach, and I help them in that class with their professional speaking, doing presentations, and we do like case studies. And then we have my music business class. So this is Music Business Management 477. This is a class that I created for the students at Fullerton. So it took me 3 years to get the class through the system between approvals, partnering with the music school, communication school, all the red tape. We finally got it done. We just finished our third semester of having the class. Most classes, new classes, you'll be lucky to have 14 or 15 students and you have to work your way up. But every semester we've been full, 32 students or more, we've been
Congratulations.
full. So I was just checking before now and I think I have 33 sign up yet. And the semester hasn't even started. Um, and I just teach the students about the music business, whether it be licensing, royalties, touring, marketing, copyright. We go through all the factors. They do 3 projects. It's a great class. I love it. I'm so honored that I was able to create the class and for it to be full and the students love it. I have great guests that come to speak and they say, you all are lucky because when I was in college, these are what the guests say, I didn't have a class like this. So the fact that you have a class like this is going to put you so far ahead. And the bonus for me is that 85 or 90% of the students that I teach are first generation college students. So that kind of fills my heart up because I'm giving them access to knowledge and dreams that their parents didn't have access to. And that's the most important part because if you can see someone that looks like you doing something that you want to do, that's half the battle. And so that's what I teach. I love it. I get excited. I get nervous. Remember, you used to get nervous the first day of class. When you go to school, I get nervous too. I just love it so much. And so, like next week's the first week of class. So I'm getting ready. I'm going to send them messages, and I love it when they do introductions. But what really really inspires me is I don't I have to figure out how to do this semester, but to see the growth in the students from week 1 to week 17, particularly because most students are shy. They don't really speak too well. So when I do the strategic business seminar class, we do improv activities. We do all sorts of things to help them get out their shell and speak better. I need to record them when they first speak, and then record them again the last week so they can see the progress before and after. So that's a little bit about what I speak. I'm at California State University, Fullerton. Um, yeah.
You're busy.
I am. I am. I need to narrow it down a little bit, but I've got it more in line now than it was in the past.
Well, you were talking about this course structure and what you were able to teach these young adults. I assume that they're young adults.
Yes. Yes, they are.
Um, and so many people have talent, and we'll just say the music industry, okay? But this flows into any kind of talent, whether it's in film or painting or writing or whatever. You have a talent, but that's only a piece of the puzzle.
Mm.
So you can be a speaker or you can be a writer, but if you don't have the business part of it, you're only going to get so far. And so one of the other things that you're adding or that you have added to your repertoire of what you offer is coaching.
Yes.
And for those folks who are already maybe in the industry and struggling to really do the business end, um, and won't be going to college courses to get this information, you are offering all of this wisdom
Yes.
and guidance to those who need access to this information. So talk a little bit about your coaching, if you would.
Yeah, I coach people, primarily people in the music industry. I also coach people in hospitality. It's like my secondary market. But really, I help educate them on just different things in the music industry, really how they can capture more revenue. So, for example, a lot of artists don't understand that there are different royalties involved when their song is sold. Like if someone buys an album off of, let's say, Amazon Music or iTunes, that qualifies for a mechanical royalty. So they need to make sure they're signed up to receive that. But if they've written a song, first of all, they should get their songwriting credits so that if they're a songwriter and they own portion of the publishing, if their song is played on the radio, they get compensated. Many people don't understand that the only people in the United States who are compensated when their song is played on the radio is the songwriter and who owns the publishing. That's not really common knowledge. People think the artists are getting paid, but no, you have to be the songwriter and own the publishing so then you can get your public performance royalties. So I teach them all about that. This is just little pieces of revenue that they can earn that they've just been missing. Then a lot of people really focus on just songs on the radio and touring. But if they're able to meet and develop relationships with music supervisors are the people who put music in TV, film, commercial, video games. If you're able to make a relationship with music supervisors so you can get your music in these uh, platforms, that's a consistent stream of income that can continue to grow. So that's another thing. Then I make sure that people understand about their digital royalties. So if their song is played on like a Sirius XM, iHeartRadio, Pandora, they qualify for a different type of royalty that's that they need to sign up for and get. And so, but there's all these little kind of secrets that they don't know. So I teach them about make sure you sign up for this, make sure you sign up for the mechanical licensing collective so you can collect all these different royalties. So the mechanical licensing collective, not to get too into the weeds,
No, it's good.
but like if your song is streamed on like a Spotify or Amazon Music, sometimes YouTube. YouTube kind of crosses over many different categories. You qualify for a different type of royalty, but you have to sign up so you can get access to it so you can claim your royalties. People don't know about this. Then, oh, go
Can I
ahead. You
ask
had a
you
question?
for, yeah, let me ask you, BMI, is that
Okay.
if you're on BMI, does that take care of everything else?
So BMI and ASCAP is for the public performance royalties. So if your song is played on the radio, if your song is played in a store, if your song is played in a club, at a stadium, you're eligible for public performance royalties. But you have to affiliate with one of these public performance rights organizations, pro, so that there what happens is that say there's say Allegiant Stadium, they buy a blanket license so that they can play any music from people's catalogs who are on BMI or ASCAP. So based on the size of that venue, they will then pay a fee to ASCAP, and ASCAP will then give you some royalties based on how often your song is played.
Oh,
So that answers that question. But there's all these different little royalties you have to sign up to pay for, and this is just one thing signing up for. We
mhm.
haven't talked about like home concerts, touring, merch, your marketing. Like there's so much. So that's what I do is I teach people about that, help them get set up, help them with their strategy, but make sure they have the knowledge so that if they get to a point where they're thinking about signing up with a record label, signing with a record, they understand what rights they could be giving away. They understand how flexible they can be with negotiations. So maybe they don't give away all their publishing, but they keep some. Maybe they can negotiate a higher share for their master recording than what's traditional. But it's all about knowledge. Once you have the knowledge, make your decision and go with it. But at least you feel confident that you understand what's going on. You're not taken advantage of. Because if you take it all the way back to the book, one of the themes throughout, particularly for the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, is that groups would sign these contracts and then they would get taken advantage of. So that's a long story short.
No, it's great information. Thank you. And that reminds me of Prince, right? So he was being taken advantage of, and so he was smart enough to figure out a way around that.
Yeah, he was on it early on. Early on. I mean, think about it. He really was doing. He changed his name to the artist formerly known as Prince, like in the early '90s, early
Mhm.
mid '90s. That's like was 30 years ago, 32 years ago, and even today we still have the same issues because
Really?
yeah, because people are more concerned about creating the art than protecting and the business of the art.
I've heard people say, "Oh, I'll do anything to, be a celebrity or to be a professional singer or artist in some way." And I've always said to myself, don't ever say that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't ever say
Because
that, and don't
that's
ever
when,
act on that. Yeah.
yeah, you get taken advantage of and you lose your power. Never say that.
Yeah, you just but you and I never answered, but you asked a question about earlier about what do I see in terms of the music industry
Oh,
today,
yeah. Hmm.
and this is we've taken a nice journey, and this is a great segue because I think you're seeing there's more artists that are going independent. I think more artists are making better, more knowledgeable decisions. They're understanding a little bit more, and this is a small percentage of the artists. And I just think that it's such an easier time to release music now. There's less and less gateways. Before you had to get with a label. It's really hard to release your music independently. Now you can make a song, upload it, it's up in an hour or whatever. So that's a good thing. The hard thing is making yourself stand out through the noise. And so we have this concept, I believe it's Kevin Kelly, who talked about 1,000 true fans. And so that's kind of what I talk to. We teach this in the class at Fullerton is like, if you can acquire 1,000 true fans that would spend $100 a year on your art, that'll get you to $100,000 a year. That's a decent living wage currently in the country. And if you can then build on top of that through more direct fan to fan engagement, a service like a Patreon, other subscription based services that get your fans closer to you, you'll start to grow and build an even better following, which will give you more revenue. Amanda Palmer is an artist that is a phenomenal example of this, where she has one of the biggest Patreons, and she used to be with a record label, left the record label, and is able to make substantially more money because she perfected this direct fan to fan interaction, and she's the model for it.
Amanda
Palmer.
Palmer. I'll have to
And if
take
you
that.
Google her, you'll see. Like, I think
Okay.
she used to be with a group called the Dresden something, and then left the group, went solo, was really big on Patreon, had a phenomenal Patreon, funds all her albums, and she goes on tour. Her fans are there. She has an extremely tight relationship with her fans, and it's the model to follow.
Hmm. Okay, that's great advice. Thank you.
Sure.
Not that I am in
You
music
never
world.
know. You never know.
Oh no, there are some things you do know. um, how do you think AI is going to play into our future with music?
So there's a lot of controversy now because you're starting to see these large AI artists that are gaining substantial following on like YouTube and Spotify and getting a lot of streams. And so there's like AI generated music, which some people can't even tell that it's AI generated. They think it's real artists. So it's kind of creating more noise for musicians. I think that hopefully there are people in the music industry that are working with government to try to set up some structure around it, but it has the potential to it's already disrupting the industry. Now, AI has some really, really good uses for the music industry where it can help you create ideas, cover art, merch. It can allow you to hear your song sung in different styles. Like you and I could create a song. We could have the lyrics. We could put it into this program. I forget the name of the program. I think it's like Sonos or something like that. And it can have someone sing back our song in a country style, in a hip hop style, in a
Oh,
gospel style. So, and it sounds good. I'm not gonna lie, it will sound like a real person singing. It's like really really good. Um, so it's already disrupting the industry, but I will say that there's no way that an AI generated song can speak to the feeling of heartbreak you might feel after a breakup or after losing someone you love. A AI generated song can't can't display the emotions you might have about missing home or missing a loved one who's gone away to war. So there's only up to a point where AI can assist, but when it comes to the heart, the passion, or the pain, that is very difficult to be duplicated in a believable fashion, in my opinion.
so well articulated, Amani, really, because it stirred something about energy. So when you meet someone and you have a connection, there's just an energetic feeling about someone. You go into a party or a group and you might kind of, you'll feel the vibe. But I wonder, it'd be a great study to have an AI generated song and then a song by a human,
Hmm.
same song, and to test the impulses, the energetic impulses of an individual to see
Okay.
how it how it affects them.
Yeah.
It would
Yeah.
be a really interesting study, at least for
Sounds
me.
like you got another project
Yeah,
on your list.
no, no. I was thinking you should do that.
I'm pretty busy now.
I don't think you sleep. Um,
Yeah.
anyway, as we wrap up, thank you so much for your time. But as we
Of
wrap
course.
up, I always ask, what a piece of advice would you give your younger self? Or I have a young adult
Mm.
son, and I would love for him to, and this younger generation, as they're coming up, to glean the wisdom from all of us old people, who have done it, and say, oh, you know what, there's this one thing that I wish I would have done differently, or I would tell my younger self, or I would like to share. What would that be?
Um, a couple things I would say. I would give the younger self advice. We talked about earlier, like life is not linear. Like it's not a straight line. And I think the sooner you can realize that, the better equipped you will be able to handle the ups and downs of life. I think specifically for me, I would have encouraged my younger self to really pursue a job or an assignment, outside the United States. Live international if you can. Now, it's not too late. I can still do that now, but do the younger the better. So that's one thing. I would say for also to give advice to my younger self, like trying to figure a way to articulate this, like don't be afraid of being alone. And that could be relationship wise, or that could be, the number of friends you have around you. Like it's okay to have a small group of friends. Like you don't need to be around a lot of people all the time. I think a lot of times we're afraid to be alone. That affects our decision making. And then I would also say if you find a career, a job that you love, and you don't feel like you're working, like hold on to that. That's very hard to find. Hold on to that. Do what you can to stick with that because it will show in your energy. You will be excited about everything you're doing, and that will attract the right people to you. Kind of like how I feel about teaching now. So that would be the advice. Yeah, yeah,
Those are great.
yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for your time. We're going to have all the ways that you can get in touch with Amani and buy the book. I mean,
Yes,
come on. The
yes.
Quiet Storm. And I love the cover. I'm gonna put that up on the
Hmm.
screen. The cover is really terrific. Um, and would love to have you back on, and maybe we'll play some music. You can do
Okay,
some
we can
DJ
play
stuff.
some music for
We can
sure.
play some
Yes,
music. Thank
yes.
you again.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
everybody. If you could like, subscribe, and definitely follow Amani Roberts. Take care. Bye
Take
bye.
care.